It's recording. So I am sharing. Am I sharing? I'm not sharing yet. I'm going to share. We've been practicing the Aleph Bet Song, but now that we're in lesson 4, I promised you that we were going to stop cheating, and I was going to share other versions of the Aleph Bet Song that don't have all of the words on it. So I just click through here. We're on Aleph Bet here, and there are lots of files on this page. And again, I will make these as links on the appropriate page where we are. But we're going to do this one. I'm pulling up this one. This one shows you a few things. We've got the complete, and hopefully it's going to let me, hopefully it's going to let me have my annotator. Yes, here it goes. Please be a dot. Yes, it's a dot. All right. So this is the Aleph Bet Song. There's a big arrow that reminds you you're going from right to left. This is the complete Aleph Bet. Now, I want to remind you, for those of you who are listening, and this is trivia stuff. You don't have to remember the trivia stuff. When everything is said and done, the only thing that I hope that you get out of this class is that if I show you a character, a consonant, you will be able to sound it out. That's what I hope you'll be able to do. That Hebrew is called what we like to call a WYSIWYG. It's a what you see is what you get language. And so anything I throw in front of you, you should be able to sound out. It is not like English, which if I show you the word, GAL, you have to know that it's an A sound instead of an A sound, instead of an A sound. It's not like English that you're guessing what the sound is going to be like. Although there are some guidelines, there are not enough guidelines. It's going to be the same. Every time you see a B, it's always going to sound like a B. And anytime you see an ah, it's going to sound like an ah. And so you should be able to, anything I put in front of you, you should be able to sound out. The problem is with Hebrew is that when you learned English, when English was your first language, when you learned English, first you knew a lot of words, and then you learned how to read those words. And it's only rarely now that you are going to encounter a word that you have to sound out and try to guess how it sounds, that you don't already know what the word is. And you may be wrong all the time. My sons tell me I'm wrong all the time. Did you know that I can't even tell you which one it is. Biopic. I don't even remember which one is right anymore because they both sound wrong to me now. But anyway, English has a lot of new words too. So I wanted to show you this because I wanted to remind you the trivia is that there are only 22 letters in Hebrew. And both of these have more than 22 letters. And there's a reason for that. That's because you're in kindergarten. And in kindergarten, we're going to say Aleph, Bet, Vet. And we're going to pretend that the Bet and the Vet are 2 different letters. But they're really the same letter, but they act differently depending on where they are in the word. And if you see that dot in the letter, which is called a dagesh, if you see a dot in a letter, it's going to sound like B. And if you do not see a belly button in it, it's going to have a void or a vacuum, and it's going to sound like V. So for all practical purposes, for kindergartners in Hebrew, if you see that, calling it a bet is very helpful. When you see that, calling it a vet may be fantasy land. There is no such thing as a vet, but calling it a vet is a very helpful thing because it helps us refer to it as the letter that sounds like V and not the part that sounds like B. So call it a vet. And if you're going to call it a vet, you'll notice not only do we have things like bet and vet and kaf and chaf and Pheh and Pheh, which we're going to learn today, but we also have the 5 final consonants on this one too. We are going to, we learn them in little bits at a time, but we're at lesson 4 today. So that means we're halfway through our lessons. So let's get to the lessons. But first, we're going to sing our Aleph Bet song. We're going to sing it twice. First time I'm going to do it where I'm going to show you the letters here. And then we're going to look at it over here. Aleph Bet Vet. No, wait a second. Hold on. Somebody may want to unmute. So we could do this as anybody want to be brave and unmute. We can have at least one person unmute so that we're getting a call and response here. It sounds terrible if more than one person unmute, but I'm happy to have it happen. You ready?
Sheila should do it because she had practice today.
Mom had practice. You should do it. Well, you don't want to hear her. She's not ready for singing. All right. I have at least one person who's volunteering. Carol is volunteering. Carol and Harriet, ready? Aleph Bet Vet,
Aleph Bet,
Gimel Dalet Hey,
Gimel Dalet Hey,
Vav Zayin Chet Tet,
Vav
Vav
Zayin
Zayin
Chet,
Chet Tet, Yud Kaf Chaf,
Yud
Yud
Kaf
Kaf
Vav,
Lamed Mem Nun,
Lamed Men Yud,
Nun, Samich Ayin Pheh,
Samach
Ayin
Ayin
Pheh, Tzadi Kufresh,
Tzadi
Tzadi
Kufresh,
Shin, Sin, Tav, Ba, Ba, Da, Shin,
Sin Tav.
All right, now I'm going to do it again, only I'm going to use this one. Now, usually if we were in person, I would let you be the ones who sang and I repeat after you, but that could get scary on a Zoom. Zoom is not designed for us to sing together. It's terrible, but I've come to learn to love this, but you can repeat after me. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you the letters. You'll see what I'm going to do. Aleph Bet Vet, Aleph Bet Vet, Gimel Dalet Hey, Gimel Dalet Hey, Vav Zayin Chet Tet, Vav Zayin Chet Tet. So far, it's exactly the same as the other side. Now we're going to get to the fun part. Yud Kaf Chaf.
No.
Oh, somebody's mad at me. I don't think that was me. All right. Yud Kaf Chaf, Lamed Mem Nun, Lamed Mem Nun, Samech Ayin Pheh, Samech Ayin Pheh, Tzadi Kufresh, Tzadi Kufresh, Shin, Sin, Tav, Ba, Shin, Sin, Tav, Ba. And now we got it. All right. So then I wanted to teach you, though, another version of, thank you for everybody who sang with me, too. That was fun. I wanted to teach you a few other things. If you're looking at this page, I want you to notice, because it's time that you may notice that there are lots of different fonts. And this is kind of helpful because some fonts are serif fonts and some fonts are sans serif fonts. But even in English, if you're trying to learn the language, you'll find that there are some fonts that are so different than the ones that you learned in kindergarten or first grade or before that you can't even recognize what it is. And so I have a chart that shows you a whole lot of Aleph Bets. But I also wanted to show, oh wait, this one's really fun. We should have done this one. This is the Aleph Bet Song, but they're made with connects letters. Anybody play with connects letters? Aleph Bet Vet, Gimel Dalet Hey. See, this is fun. I have too much fun sometimes. We usually do this where the kids are singing. Let's go back to, nope, let's go back and back and back. The kids usually play, we're making this the right size. Nope, we're making this the right size. Reset. Thank you. All right. We're going back to learn the Hebrew alphabet on the Hebrew doc page, but I make the kids learn the alphabet usually when I'm working with little kids by using clay and using other things so that they could do that. So I wanted to show you some other songs. And these songs exist not only in a PDF, so you're looking at it, which is what I'm going to show you now, but you can have this here. Some of them have videos. I don't have videos of all of them, I realized this week, and I'm going to have to fix that. This is one of my favorite versions of the Aleph Bet Song. And it's on yesterday's video as well. This one is kind of like, as we pointed out, it's kind of like the song Apples and Bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. And then you say, I like to eat apples and bananas. I like to eat apples and bananas. And then you go on through all of the vowel sounds. Well, we're going to do that with these vowel sounds. We're going to take each consonant and we're going to put a vowel. The first vowel we're going to do is ah, like this, ah, underneath each one. I'm not going to write it under there. You're just going to have to trust me that it's under every single one. I can do this. I can make a giant X, which represents any consonant, and I could put the ah underneath it. And that's, you're just going to have to extrapolate and put it here. And we're going to practice reading them as if we have an ah underneath each one. So it is eventually going to sound like this. abagadahava, zachatayakala, manasa apatsa, karashasata. And I realize you only know about half of those consonants if you just started learning with me. So please don't be hard on yourself. I'm not expecting you to know them all, but it's fun to practice. But what I also don't expect you to do is be able to sound them all out like this, especially when we haven't learned all the letters. So I'm going to take them half a line at a time and have you repeat after me. Only this time I'd like to have everybody else stay muted and you repeat after me on your own side of the screen, and I'll do your repeat for you on the audio. But you are very welcome and encouraged to sing out loud. So this is going to be abaga, try abaga, dahava, dahava, zachata, zachata, yakala, yakala, manasa, manasa, apatsa, apatsa, kara. Now this is hard. I like to do the last line all in one shot. I think you could do this. Karashasata, karashasata. And we've learned almost all of the letters. We've learned a good chunk on each line. So I think that it's not as intimidating as it could be. In fact, I bet you could probably do the whole first line without having to do it half. So we're going to use the one dot. This time it's going to be the E. We're going to say E, B, G, D, He, V. So you could do that all in one shot. E, B, G, D, He, V. Then we're going to say half line. Zichiti, zichiti, yikili, yikili, minisi, minisi, epitsi, epitsi, kirishi, siti, kirishi, siti. So there is an audio for this. And then, so you print out the consonants and then you listen to the audio, and I'm going to put one up that's a video singing along with it. But I forgot to give the disclaimer for this, and that is, you see, I am not trying to do anything nefarious. I am just taking the same exact vowel and sticking it under every single consonant in order. But sometimes when I say every consonant in order with specific vowels, repeating the vowels, we wind up saying words that are considered taboo words in other languages or in English or in Hebrew or other things. So sometimes we get a lot of giggling. I'm going to leave that to you about whether your language includes any of these things that are bad words in your language when we are just doing our vowels over and over again. I'm just letting you know, I didn't do it on purpose. I'm not trying to make you giggle. But it'll happen. So the song is here. That's the Hebrew, the Aleph Bet sounds of letters. That's this one. And this is the PDF that I just did. And this is the sound, but it's sound only. You have to print one out or look at one and do the other one. We'll figure that out. And this page has things like the Aleph Bet in many fonts. And when you come here and you click on this, that's where we're going to go to get to our practice thing. I have to clear that screen on there. Sorry about that. All right, but that's not what we're doing today. Today, right now, we're going to come back to our Aleph Bet from B'nai Zion. Oh, maybe we can get there by coming back this way a bunch. I don't want to have to start from scratch. Here we go. Okay, Hebrew from day one, lesson 4. Opening up the PDF. And I'm doing this partially to show you that from the first lesson, we did this much Hebrew, Bereshit bara. In the second lesson, we added this much, Elohim et hashamayim. In the third lesson, we learned a lot more, many of which was already letters that we knew. Ve'et haaretz, ve'haaretz hayata tohu vavohu ve'choshech. So we've got all of that down, but I want to show you this because this is, I think, really cool. This is lesson 4 down here at the bottom. The dark letters are the ones we're going to learn today. Everything else are things you already know. And I think that that's pretty cool. You know a lot of Hebrew, and it is not the case that by starting with the first day of creation that you are specifically learning the most common consonants first. I told you about one of the methods that I had, one of the primers where you were learning first the most common 5 letters and then the next most common 5 letters. And then I had songs for you. That's not what's happening here, except it turns out that most of them are pretty common. We've learned some that are less common already, but a lot of them are very common. So as you can tell, because look at how many letters are in them. Look at how many letters you already know. So technically, you could sound out all of this. And after today, you will be able, other than these 4 letters, you will be able to sound out all of this. This whole, everything here that's in dark, you should be able to sound out. You may not understand it, and you do not have to understand it. I will try to give you some insights about the words because it is the Genesis, it's the creation story, so that's helpful. But all you have to be able to do is sound it out. So let's get to it. 4 consonants. And there's a fun thing about today's consonants, and that is that most of them are letters that you find on your face. This letter, which looks like this, I'm going to make you a box like I always do to kind of show you how big this letter is. So if that's the box, I'm going to do 2 boxes side by side. I'm going to show you how to do the block and the cursive of this, because I think it helps for you to be able to, if you can draw the letter. I didn't used to do it like this. It's really okay with me if you never learn how to write the letters, but I feel like if you draw them, then it makes you appreciate the shape better. This letter in particular is a letter that you need to be able to appreciate the shape for, because it is what we call a confusable. There's another letter that this one gets confused with a lot. I had been taught once upon a time that you try as much as possible never to teach the confusables together, because then they're just going to always be confused together. So I'm not going to teach it to you today, but I do want to show you that there's a reason why I want you to feel the shape of this letter. And the shape of this letter goes like this. You're going to come down this line and go across. It's at the bottom. And then you're going to come from here somewhere around the top corner, possibly in a little bit more. If I showed you, let's say, a box here around this one, you would see that it kind of fills up the box. All right. And this word means eye, the eye on your face. The way to say the word for eye is ayin. That's the way to say it. That's an ayin. It's an eye. And when it was a pictograph, you could kind of imagine that we can turn this into an eye. I mean, I don't know, put a little, wait, I'm still in a square. You can't be a square. But I think that you could kind of put a little eyeball in here and maybe turn it on its side and you can see eyes there. But it was an eye, it was a pictograph of an eye. And I sometimes like to say that the ayin is as loud as an eye, because listen how loud my eye is. Not very loud. Most people think of this as a silent consonant, but the truth is it's not a silent consonant. It's a little bit louder than that. Just like the Aleph is not a silent consonant, it's a little bit louder than that. There are times when consonants like a hey at the end of the word is silent. You don't feel it at all. But the ayin and the aleph are not. So we talked about how the aleph is a glottal stop. Like if you were about to say the word ouch, before you get to what we know is an O of ouch, the letter O of ouch, before we get there, your throat has to close down and open up before you can say ouch. So you feel it closing down and opening up. It is called a glottal stop. It comes from the back of your throat. That's the glottis, and it's going to close down and open up, and that's your glottal stop. The ayin is a glottal stop, but it's called a voiced glottal stop. And what is a voiced letter? In phonetics, in phonemes, each letter usually has a non-voiced, each sound has a non-voiced and a voiced version. So if you take, for example, the word, the letter, the sound for p, where you take 2 lips and you put them together and you get a burst of air to pop out of it, p. That's a p sound, p. That is not the voiced version. If I make the same shape with my lips, but I voice it, then it's going to sound like b, b, b. So I have p, 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 and b, b, b. So that's the non-voiced and the voiced version. We're about to learn a p today, but that's not what I'm worried about here. I want to show you the ayin, because the official pronunciation of an ayin is a voiced glottal stop. So imagine that you close down your throat and you open it up again like the beginning of the word ouch. But instead of just it's it's like you're choking. Ayin. So you will hear me try to, in all of the practice things that you hear, you'll hear me try to say that ayin consistently. You will hear the Yemenite Jews all speak with beautiful accents. They claim that Yemenite Jews speak the most perfect pronunciation of Hebrew. You will hear Arabic, the Arabic speakers. There's an ayin, similar sounding letter in Arabic languages, but so you'll hear someone who comes from an Arabic speaking country with a really good ayin. You will in some of the dialects that we've talked about, like Judaico-Romanesco, they will turn it into an NGK. That's how thick they turn their ayin of choking. So but and other dialects will sometimes make the ayin be thicker because it's like an NG almost. But you are very, very, very welcome to make it be as noisy as an I and just make it silent, ayin. So I've got to clear this. And we're going to go back to being a spotlight. And we're going to practice an ayin because I wanted to show you something cool about the practice for the ayin. Let's see, we have them all on here. Yes. So for the ayin, can you see that? Is that too small to see those letters? So the one that we're going to have here, we see it twice in our sentence, in our phrase, is the one that's big and chunky. And that's the ah. But this is also going to sound like ah, and this is going to sound like and and e, and e, and o, and o, and oo, and oo. And then we get to hear that because it is what's called a guttural or an essentially silent letter, there are 4 essentially silent letters, also known as gutturals, which means they come from the back of your throat, the Aleph, the He, the Chet, and the Ayin, which we've now learned all 4 of them. Those 4 letters are the gutturals, and the gutturals can never take a moving schwa. They always have to have a composite vowel instead. So you don't have to know what a moving schwa is. You just have to know that when you see this combination, it's going to sound like ah. And when you see this combination, it's going to sound like eh. And when you see this combination, it's going to sound like oh. And that's what you have to know. And we're not going to have the schwa as the moving schwa by itself. And we're going to learn this vocabulary. I'm going to make it really big so that we can see the vocabulary. Come over here. And we're going to try to read some real words. So this word is how we say people or nation. And the word is, and you may know this word already, the word is am. Like Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai. The people of Israel live. Am Yisrael, as opposed to Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, or the guy whose name was Yisrael. But Am means a nation or a people, one of the words that means a nation or people. This word is ironic because it sounds like Ir, but it means city. Ir. Ir is a city. This one is the word for evening. So you may already know this word because you may already know about Shabbat evening services and Shabbat evening services, or Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. If you're familiar with the names of those services, when it gets to an evening service, it's called Erev Rosh Hashanah, Erev Yom Kippur, Erev Shabbat. I'm going to remind you that there are certain patterns in Hebrew, and this is one of them. Anytime you have 2 es together, I call them the words. If you have, they're called segolates, but I call them es. Anytime you have 2 es together, the accent is always on the first e. And that is whether they are all by themselves, like a little word like this, that all it has is 2 es plus the consonants, or whether it's in the middle of a bigger word and you see 2 es together, the accent is going to be on the first e. So this one is Erev. So you have the ayin, which looks like an I, and it sounds like ah. And then you have and then the rounded resh, and and then the vet. That sounds like a void or a vacuum. It sounds like v. This word is a really important word for you to learn how to say because you're studying Hebrew. You might as well learn how to say the Hebrew language. This is how you say the Hebrew language. And that is, you have the ayin with the 1 dot, the e dot, and then you have a vet with a resting schwa, eve, and then you have a rounded resh with this long e, which, and then you have the attached to the top with the tail or toe at the bottom is a t, ivrit. Ivrit is how you say the word for the language Hebrew. Um, and you'll notice that it's a 2-syllable word and the accent's on the last syllable, because most of the time, if you have a word, the accent's going to be on the last syllable. I'm telling you that not because you need to remember any of these words, but if you're sounding them out and you want to sound intelligent, you may want to try that. You may want to make the last syllable be accented. All right, so that's the first of our letters. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out of order a little bit. And I'm going to teach you, which is going to be terrible when it comes to us trying to read some words. But the next one I want to teach you is the nun. It looks like it says nun. In Hebrew, you could see it says nun, but forget that. It's called nun, and which is part of why I have the Hebrew there also. Let me show you how. Oh, you know what I didn't do? Nobody stopped me. You know what I didn't do? I didn't show you how to do a cursive ayin. Cursive ayin is really fun. I told you that this means I. The cursive ayin looks, I think, almost more like an I, but you're going to have to turn it on its side to do that. It goes like this, and it's fun to draw too. So I need another color. It goes like this. Some people make it start a little bit above the line or in the box, but it looks like that. So it could be in the box or a little bit above the box, a little bit, but it's mostly in the box. Wow, that's a terrible one. There's no hole in there. You want to see a hole. That's not good. I made it too thick. I could make a thinner. La la la. That's an ayin. It looks a lot like an eye. You want to put it on its side. And anyway, ayin. Now let's clear this and let's go to the next letter. Then, and I have to scroll all the way down. The next letter that I want to teach you, it's not the one that comes in order of the text, but the next letter I want to teach you is this one. I like to call this one the Narrow Nose Nun. And I call it a Narrow Nose Nun because if I show you my box here, and I'm going to try to remember, here's a box. I should try to remember to draw it in there. If I show you the box, then you can see that this letter is narrow because it only takes up half of the box. A straight line down. It's terrible to write this with a mouse, but it's a straight line down. It's a narrow nose nun. Or let's say I draw a box around that one so you can kind of see where it is, but the nun is only going to take up about half of the box. That's how wide it is. The cursive version of it is going to look something like this. It's either going to be here and it's also going to take up only about half of the box, or sometimes people write it below the line. And please don't tell me that it looks like any letter that you recognize in English, because that would make me very sad because it doesn't sound like N. But I want to show you that the narrow nose nun, and you're going to be so impressed with my drawing skills here, looks like la 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 a nun. It looks like a nose. That's my narrow nose. And it has a nostril down here. That's the part that's this part over here, the nostril. And I say that because some people get it confused with the vav, but the vav doesn't have a nostril down here. The vav is just very narrow and very straight. Those are terrible. It's hard to draw like that. I should have gone back to when I was drawing the other. So that's the nun, and you saw the nun, the block, which looks like a narrow nose, and the swoopy one, which also looks like a nose. If I were drawing a, I'd have my ayin, which looks like this, my eye. See, there's one eye. And then I'd have another eye that looks like this. I put it on its side. There's another ayin. And I could either have my nose that look like that, or I could use my cursive ones, and I could have my eye that looks like this and another eye that looks like this. And maybe they're looking a little bit at you over there. And then I could have my narrow nose nun. Ta-da! Still looks like a nose. I'm just doing such a good job drawing those pictures. I'm so proud of myself. All right, so then I want to show you the two other letters that we have, and then we'll practice reading them, but I wanted to make sure that I showed you those letters. These other two letters that we have, I'm going to do this over here. I want you to take your lip, your top lip, and put it over your bottom lip and go like this. That's this letter. This letter is a Pheh. We're going to draw it. It's going to look like this when we draw it. I'm going to try this one again with a thin. Let's see if this works. It's this big. Can you see that? No, not very well. Let's try it with a darker color. This is going to go like this. That's a little better. I should have made the box be, oh, that's very wiggly. And then we're going to take the lip and put it up here. And then we have to put a pill in it to turn it into, oops, I have to make a really wiggly dot. That's a terrible dot. But I have to put a dot. And the dot could go either there, or the dot could go down here. I have to wiggle a lot for the dot, or the dot could go here. The dot just has to go somewhere into that mouth. I call the dot a pill. Remember when it was a bet, it was a belly button? Well, this is a pill in the Pheh, because the word Pheh means mouth. So if I were going to do my drawing again, where I showed you my eyes, I have one eye here and one eye here, and I have my nose, and then I have a mouth. I have this mouth here, la, 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 and my lip with a dot, which keeps disappearing unless I make it very wiggly, and it doesn't want to wiggle. All right, Pheh. So with a pill. So I've got all body parts, all my facial parts. So we have the Pheh, which we showed like this. Sometimes people write a Pheh where they've got a little bit of a space over here. This thing, there's a little bit of a space there. And sometimes they'll make the Pheh where there's no space at all. It's over here like that. Each time when it has a pill in it, it sounds like a Pheh, because you take your top lip and put it over the bottom lip. What if I take my teeth, my fangs, and I put my fangs over my bottom lip? Then it sounds like there's no pill. When there's a pill, I take my top lip and I put it on top of my bottom lip. But when there's no pill, then it's a Pheh, it's a fang. Those are the 4 letters that we needed to know for today. And then I want to, oh, but I didn't show you how to do the cursive. The cursive is really fun because you start in the middle and you swirl around. You have swirling around. Okay, swirling around. So if you need a dot in it, you put a pill somewhere. That was a very big pill. And if there's no dot, then it's a Pheh. And those are all of the letters. But what I wanted to do then is see if we can read some Hebrew text. So instead of practicing all of these little words on here, I want to go to this. We're going to make this a size where you can see all of these letters. And we're going to try to read some of this text, okay? So we already read this. This was Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz hayata tohu vavohu v'choshech. And now we have the new stuff. So this says al, and this says Paneh. There's a hyphen here. I don't think we've seen a hyphen before. The hyphen means that this group, this pair of words is going to be treated kind of as if it were one word, as far as accent goes and trope goes and things like that. It's not, you don't have to worry about it. Al means on, Paneh means the face of, al Paneh, al Paneh. And remember, this was a diphthong. If you have an and a yud, it sounds like a, al Paneh, Taho. So it says that the land was void and unformed, and darkness, which sounds like choshech, which sounds like velvet, which is kind of comforting and also intimidating at the same time. It says there's darkness, al panei tahom, on the face of the deep. But deep has a put at the end of it, and it sounds kind of like somebody's beeping somebody's nose. I don't think it sounds nearly as deep as tahom. I think tahom is a very deep word. Al panei tahom. So there's darkness on the face of the deep. The ruach, and we see this word, and I told you that when you have a chet at the end of a word with a patach, the ah vowel underneath it. It's called a sneaky patach, and it reverses the pronunciation. So you would want to pronounce this as verucha, but when it's at the end of a word and the patach comes under it, and you'll notice it'll catch your eye because it is rare that you're going to see a vowel under the end of under the last letter of a word anyway. So, but you're going to pronounce it instead of verucha, you're going to pronounce it veruach. Elohim, we've seen that word before. This is becoming a sight recognition word. Elohim means God, and the ruach means wind or spirit or breath of God. Merachefet. So this is one of those times where we have two es together. The trope mark is telling us where the accent mark is, but I already told you where the accent mark is. Merachefet, which means is hovering, but it also means was hovering, and it means will be hovering because there's no such thing as present tense in biblical Hebrew. So the spirit, the wind, the breath of God is hovering al paneh. We just saw al paneh. What? We're repeating again. Did the rabbi just say that we repeat a lot in this story because there's a baby here? The baby is the world. And we're going to repeat a lot, just like we repeat a lot when we're talking to babies. So it says, and the spirit of God, merachefet, is hovering al paneh, on the face of not the tahom, the deep, but al paneh hamayim, the face of the water. And then we say, we're in the third sentence, vayomer Elohim, there it is again, Elohim, and God said, and God said, be light. God didn't say, let there be light with rumbling and grumbling, because there was no reason for God to shout. There wasn't anything there. All God had to do is breathe. We know that the breath of God is there. That's all that's there. So God said, how cool is that? Vayhi or, and light was. Go ahead, Carol. I'm unmuting you. Go.
Okay. I'm trying to get, all right. Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Okay. I thought it was let there be light, and is that subjunctive?
No. Let there be is they're trying to translate it as in a future tense. I am saying that it could, so light, I'm saying that it could also be a command form for light. Or be light, and light was, and light was.
Okay.
It could also be future tense. If God says light will be, then light was. It could be like that too. Anybody who thinks that they know how to translate this, I'm embarrassed for you because it is, I like to say Torah is gloriously ambiguous. And it is true that you can find forms and you can translate and whatever, but I like hearing it and understanding it. And I like, there's lots of, there are ways of like in the beginning, this word doesn't mean in the beginning at all. I mean, I could let you have it, but it means other things. And I would love to share with you some of the other things at some point. But so God says, and light was. So God says, be light, and light was. And then it says, Vayar Elohim. And you'll notice that this word Vayar sounds a lot like, or there's a lot of repetitions and sounds and things. And it says, Vayar Elohim, and God saw et haor, the light. And that's as far as we can go today, because we have to learn the next letter for next time. Carol, your hand's still up? Or can I put your hand down? I put your hand down. Lexi, your hand is up.
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
I was told, instead of it saying be light, I was told that it was light be. Is there a difference?
No, it's a commanding light. But if you are told that, I hope that you are now confident enough to say, what does this mean to me? Well, I'm going to wait and I'm going to interpret it. And by the way, this is not supposed to be an interpreting class. It's supposed to just be a can you sound it out? But at the end of this chapter, you're going to see stuff. You're going to see things like the word for spirit or wind or breath is a word that can be either masculine or feminine. And I am going to say that God has, God wrote this. I'm going to say that we got this story on Sinai, that Moses took dictation. That's going to be my story today. And that I'm sticking to that story today. And that God chose the words, and God decided that this word in this version, in this story, in this sentence is feminine, even though in other places it's masculine. So I'm going to point out that here we're talking about God as a creator, and that's masculine and singular, even though it's a plural looking word. And here we're talking about the spirit of God, the breath of God, the wind of God, and it's feminine. And I'm going to say that when you see God interacting with the world in a physical way, God is usually masculine. And when you see God interacting with the world in a spiritual way, God is usually represented by feminine words. And do you want to learn something from that? I don't know, but it's just a cool thing to notice. I mean, I just think it's cool. Marla, you're next.
Okay, the first word of line Dalit, line 4,
Mm-hmm.
Bayar.
Yes.
That is, it looks like a Z under the resh. What
I
is
know. And I know how much that distracts you. You and I talked about this before, that we need to have practice sheets that don't have trope. That's the trope.
that? Oh, that is a trope?
Yep. So that's going to be Vayar. It does this like, it looks like what it is. So that's the trope mark.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. With that, I think we're supposed to be finishing. So I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to